Hey friends! Today I'm diving into a satirical body horror, The Substance, and it's definitely one of the most talked about body horror films of the year. Trust me, you've never seen anything quite like it. The movie kicks off with a scene involving egg yolk. In this quirky start, an injection is placed inside an egg, which leads to another egg separating from it. This idea is at the heart of the story, but let's focus on our main character. Elizabeth Sparkle was once the biggest star in Hollywood, famous enough to have a street named after her. But as time goes on, everything changes. The road that once celebrated her success is now neglected, just like Elizabeth herself. She's now celebrating her 50th birthday, and the signs of aging are hard to miss, leaving her feeling down. Her real heartbreak comes when she tries to use the restroom, but finds the ladies' room out of order. This forces her to use the men's restroom, where she overhears Harvey, the producer of her long-running show. He talks to his partner, saying Elizabeth is old and no longer beautiful, and it's time to replace her with a younger star. Hearing this crushes her spirit. Feeling despondent, Elizabeth drives home and spots her billboard being taken down. This realization hits hard. She's no longer in the spotlight, and the glamorous life she once knew is slipping away. Distracted by her thoughts, she ends up in a car accident and is rushed to the hospital. After a checkup, she's free to leave. But where will she go now that the star life is fading away from her? A nurse checks her bag and slips a pen drive into her pocket. Later, she spots that same pen drive lying outside and picks it up. While she's out, she runs into an old friend and chats with him for a bit. After exchanging numbers and promising to catch up later, she heads home. Once there, she plugs in the pen drive to see what's on it. Inside, she discovers a video message about the substance. The message explains that by injecting a serum called Substance into an aging body, new cells will form, creating a younger, more beautiful version of the person known as the other self. It goes on to say that humans are like a matrix, with everything coming from within them, and to get the serum, you just need to contact the number provided. Hearing all this nonsense for the first time makes Elizabeth feel overwhelmed. She tosses the pen drive into the trash. Later that night, she heads to a bar, feeling lonely. People no longer recognize her as the star she once was, which deeply frustrates her. She drinks too much and upon returning home, feels even sadder. Looking at her awards, she notices a gift covered in sparkles. Once a source of joy, it now feels like a reminder of her lost spark. In a fit of anger, she hurls the gift at her framed photo. Afterward, she digs the pen drive out of the trash and calls the number listed on it to order the serum. The operator asks her to write down an address. That night, she falls asleep, and when she wakes up the next day, she prepares breakfast. While eating, she spots an ad in the newspaper for her own show. It announces a search for a new host to become the next Elizabeth Sparkle. This infuriates her, realizing everything she once had is being taken away. Shortly after, she receives a letter containing only a card with the number 503 written on it. It happened, and now she remembers that she got an address at night. She goes to that address, which looks cheap from the outside, but is actually very high-tech inside. When she steps in, she finds a room filled with lockers. All the lockers and even the main gate can only be opened with a special card that has a specific number on it. Only the person with the number 503 can access them. As she looks around, she sees two lockers. One has a different number, and the other has her number. She opens the locker with her number and takes out a box. When she gets home, she opens the box and finds 3 different items inside. One is called the activator, which she needs to use only once. The second is a daily stabilizer, and the third is a switch. The switch allows her to be her new self for 7 days, and then switch back to her old self for the next 7 days. There are also different types of food included for her main self, her new self, and her matrix self. We don't fully understand why this food is provided yet, but we will learn soon. The important part is that for the next 7 days, the new Elizabeth will be out in the world. while the old Elizabeth has decided she wants her stardom back. So, she injects the serum into herself. Moments later, she starts to feel intense pain, and we see movement inside her body as she begins to lose consciousness. When she finally opens her eyes, she sees her old body lying there, and her back is completely torn. This sight upsets her deeply. When she looks in the mirror, she sees a young woman, about 25 to 30 years old. This is the new self that has emerged from within Elizabeth. Everything about her is different, her hair, eyes, and voice, but the cells of her body are still the same. The only change is that her cells have become new, giving her fresh skin while the old self lies behind. Now that Elizabeth has transformed, she feels very happy because she is young and beautiful. But suddenly, her nose starts to bleed. She remembers that she needs to take the stabilizer every day for the next 7 days to keep her new self stable. She quickly stitches up her old body, which has the movie's scary poster on it. The food she received is important because both bodies need to be fed while they are used at different times. If she doesn't eat, she could die, so she feeds her old body and then goes out. Feeling confident, she heads to the address where she needs to audition for Elizabeth's show, wearing a brand new bikini. She looks stunning and has a lot of talent, so she easily gets selected. Instead of using her name Elizabeth, she introduces herself as Sue. From now on, we will call her main body Elizabeth and her beautiful new self Sue. Harvey, the producer, talks to her, and she is very happy and impressed. She tells him that she'll be taking care of her sick mother for 7 days. He responds that she can do whatever she likes, just as long as she stays on the show. Hearing this makes her very excited. A week goes by like this. She takes the stabilizer every day, goes out, fulfills her dreams, and helps the show succeed. She becomes popular and does many ads, accomplishing everything Elizabeth wanted to do when she was young, but couldn't because of her old body. As the 7th-day night arrives, it's time for her to switch. Now, Sue will lie there as an empty body. For the next 7 days, Elizabeth understands her situation. She will be outside, while her old body remains lying still, being fed by her. Elizabeth will take care of her old body, while in the next 7 days, Sue will take over and feed Elizabeth instead. Sue starts by eating a lot because she has a human body's needs. In the next scene, she goes to Harvey's office to collect her things, but he throws her out, insulting her. She endures this humiliation and returns home. Elizabeth manages to survive the week, and she receives a letter saying her kit has arrived, which she collects. After switching again, she begins living her amazing life and climbs the stairs of success. While working, she realizes she can't keep Elizabeth in a cramped space, so she creates a hidden area behind the bathroom wall to keep her. Here, she will feed and switch Elizabeth. As she builds this hidden space, her neighbor Oliver thinks Elizabeth is behind the noise and gets angry. However, when he sees Sue, he calms down and starts flirting with her. Sue has created the space but puts aside a queen-sized photo of Elizabeth because now she is the star. As time passes, Elizabeth's mind weakens, while Sue's confidence grows with her success. Since she's gaining popularity, Sue questions why she needs Elizabeth anymore. The show Sue stars in becomes very popular, and she enjoys her life, partying, drinking, and hooking up with a guy she brings home. They start getting intimate, but as the 7th day arrives, her nose begins to bleed, and she decides she wants a few extra hours of fun. So, she takes the stabilizer from Elizabeth's body. Earlier, I mentioned that the connection between Elizabeth and Sue was getting stronger. Then we see Sue getting intimate, but suddenly, her body starts to feel like it's bursting. It turns out this was just a bad dream, triggered by the shocking visions. Sue is fine, but she has taken the stabilizer from Elizabeth's body. When the switch happens, Elizabeth wakes up to find that Sue has been partying a lot. She realizes Sue has hooked up with someone, but notices one of Sue's fingers is damaged. Elizabeth calls the company to report what happened. She explains that Sue misused the system while drunk, which led to an alteration. The company responds that both of them are the same person, and whatever the other self experiences will impact the main body. This means that if Sue enjoys extra beauty or experiences, Elizabeth will have to face the consequences. Once this occurs, it cannot be reversed, and both selves must respect the balance between them. Elizabeth feels upset about this, as Sue's personality is starting to overshadow hers. After seeing Sue's attractiveness on TV, Elizabeth begins to reflect on her own feelings. Meanwhile, Oliver tries to flirt with Sue and asks her out, but Elizabeth shuts the door on him. A week passes, and Elizabeth receives another delivery kit, which comes every week. Feeling different and a bit worried, she visits a cafe where she meets an older man. He mentions that her period seems to be lasting longer than usual. Elizabeth recognizes him as the young nurse who once informed her about the substance, realizing that his old self is actually his matrix or main body. When she asks why he's following her, he explains that he just wants to see how things are going. He expresses concern about whether her other self is consuming her identity, asking if Sue has started to swallow her whole. This is worrying since Sue took the stabilizer from Elizabeth's body. Elizabeth arrives home and encounters Sue's hookup partner, feeling a bit jealous because he is very attractive. Once home, she talks to her friend Fred, who had given her his number after the accident. He is really into her, which makes Elizabeth happy, and they agree to meet in the evening. As she prepares for the evening, Elizabeth keeps looking at herself, comparing her looks to Sue's beauty. This makes her feel insecure, so she puts on makeup and wears sexy clothes. However, she still feels jealous and upset about not being as beautiful as Sue, so she decides to stay home instead of meeting Fred, who waits for her all night. The next day, Elizabeth switches with Sue and has a nightmare during a shoot. She dreams of a bump on her back, and when she checks, a piece of chicken leg comes out. She wakes up shocked and wonders if this could be true. When she goes outside, she finds a bus with food everywhere, realizing that she has been at home doing nothing but eating. Elizabeth calls the company to say she isn't enjoying her life and feels she doesn't have enough time. She has wasted her week, and the balance between her and Sue is off. The company reminds her that they are the same person, and they both need to decide together how to live. Frustrated, Elizabeth heads to the show where Harvey tells her the show is a hit. She is getting a promotion, new opportunities, better pay, and will host the biggest show on New Year's Eve. This news makes her very happy. Now that she has work and is on the path to stardom, Elizabeth needs more time to prepare. She used to take a few hours, but now she wants extra days. To manage this, she removes the stabilizer. When Elizabeth finally switches, she finds that one of her legs, one arm, half of her face, and all her hair are damaged, as if those parts had aged rapidly. The rest of her body looks like it belongs to a 70 to 75-year-old woman. Elizabeth calls the company, saying that Sue is stealing her extra time, which means she's also stealing her youth. A nurse had previously warned her that her other body, the one inside the womb, wasn't nourishing her. Elizabeth realizes that Sue may be acting selfishly without considering the consequences. The company informs her that she can stop this process, but she won't get back what she has lost. Since Elizabeth has already sacrificed so much, she chooses to continue with the arrangement. Later, Elizabeth watches TV and sees Sue's interview. Sue is promoting a hit movie, which makes Elizabeth feel jealous. Sue's comments make Elizabeth feel outdated, and the comparisons between them anger her. Harvey even gifted Elizabeth a recipe book, which she uses to cook out of frustration and jealousy. Standing in front of the mirror, Elizabeth expresses her anger, claiming Sue's beauty comes from stealing it from her. In a fit of rage, Elizabeth decides she won't go back to her old self and chooses to remain as Sue. She drains a lot of stabilizer fluid from Elizabeth's body. And now, 3 months later, it's December 30th, the day before her New Year's Eve show. She relaxes at home with her boyfriend. Elizabeth suddenly starts to bleed from her nose, indicating she needs more fluid. Realizing that she hasn't fed Elizabeth at all, she understands she must switch back to reset the fluid cycle. Despite her reluctance, she switches back, And when Elizabeth wakes up, she finds herself very old and hunched over. Sue's boyfriend hears her voice, shocked by the transformation. Sue runs away, realizing that her boyfriend was only with her for her looks. Elizabeth, feeling hurt and angry, calls the company and demands to stop everything. They try to explain, but she refuses, so they give her a Terminator serum meant to kill her. Elizabeth injects the serum into Sue, but soon realizes that Sue was a part of what the world wanted. She tries to wake Sue up, but when the switch doesn't work, she forcefully flips it, causing Sue to awaken. However, Elizabeth and Sue are now fundamentally different. When Sue sees Elizabeth trying to destroy her, she gets angry and attacks her. Sue beats Elizabeth, throwing her around and trying to hurt her. Elizabeth desperately tries to hide in the washroom, but Sue breaks in and continues to assault her. Eventually, Elizabeth dies, and Sue realizes her mistake. Despite their differences, they were still one and the same. Later, Sue becomes stressed and starts to experience physical deterioration. Her teeth and nails fall out, and she bleeds. Afraid of facing anyone, she runs home. In an attempt to become a better version of herself, Sue injects an active substance into her body. However, because she is already a separate self, the reaction causes her cells to break apart instead of improving her. What emerges is a grotesque monster with mismatched body parts and an ugly face, with Elizabeth's face stuck on the back. This transformation symbolizes how a person clings to their past beauty and fame, struggling to accept the reality of aging. Sue is trapped in her thoughts about how she once was and how her life has changed, unable to accept her old age. The essence of the movie revolves around Elizabeth's internal struggles and the various deformities representing her feelings. To hide her true self, she covers her face with a large photo of Elizabeth. When she arrives at the studio, she becomes like everyone else, but her distorted cells create a terrifying sight, hands and other body parts emerging unexpectedly, which frightens those around her. As she bursts and her blood spills everywhere, she collapses on the road, leaving only Elizabeth's face behind. This symbolizes her soul's desire to fight for life despite her struggle with aging. Although Elizabeth could have enjoyed a good life in her 50s with her wealth and her friend Fred, she chose a path that ultimately led to her downfall, trying to defy time and cling to her beauty. The remnants of Elizabeth's face color her, and she visits the stand made in her name, envisioning the sparkles and life she once had. In the end, she melts away, marking the conclusion of her journey, leaving only her name behind. The film, titled The Substance, emphasizes the idea that Elizabeth and Sue were intertwined, yet their thoughts diverged. Sue's youthful mindset led her to destroy Elizabeth out of jealousy, resulting in their mutual demise. Elizabeth could have comfortably lived in her 50s, enjoying her fame and fortune, but she couldn't accept that beauty and stardom fade over time. In essence, the movie portrays the struggle with aging and the consequences of jealousy, showing how both characters ultimately faced the same fate. This situation is rare, and people must accept their age roles. Imagine an actor who did romantic films at 20 but tries to do the same at 60. This wouldn't work, and it's important for Elizabeth to accept her fate. The serum she used reflects human greed and the lengths people will go to. If Elizabeth had lived comfortably, she could have had a long, fulfilling life. The Sue that emerged from Elizabeth represented her youthful body, but slowly, she could have lived for another 10 or 15 years and enjoyed life. Elizabeth should have recognized that Sue was part of her, not someone else. However, her jealousy clouded her judgment. The high-tech serum from the company raises questions about their motives. They might have access to alien technology, using it for experiments. The nurse seems to understand the situation, but knows the younger self consumes the main body. It suggested that he gave a termination serum to his younger self to live longer. Elizabeth's deformed version at the end symbolizes her struggle to stay alive, while her jealousy led to her downfall. This body horror film has gained popularity for its unique perspective, and many are discussing it. I hope this explanation helps you understand the movie better. If you enjoyed it, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.